Mrs. Minister, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much. And,
great to be with you.
Thank you. Let me start with the following question. Tensions are escalating with China. Is China pressuring Canada over Mrs. Meng in other ways?
So you're quite right that our relationship with China is going through a difficult phase right now. And the Prime Minister has been very clear that in calling for the immediate release of Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spavor, who have been detained in Canada's view for no good reason. And, you know, that is unacceptable to Canada. And the Prime Minister and our whole government has been calling for these two Canadians to be released at once. Having said that, I think it's also important for us to remember that Canada has a relationship with China which has many elements to it. It's a relationship of very long standing, and I think that it is in the interests of both Canada and China that we resolve this situation and we move forward.
Mrs. Minister, as the Foreign Minister of Canada, you led the NAFTA negotiations for 13 months, more than a year. And the result was a success. You secured an agreement after more than a month. What are the challenges ahead?
Well, you know, I am glad that you consider the deal that we did to be a success. That's my view too. And I think, you know, that really was the single biggest issue in our trade relationship with the United States, the single biggest issue in Canada's trading relationship with the world, because the U.S. is our largest trading partner. What we really hope is, having agreed a new deal, that can bring some confidence, some certainty to the Canadian economy, to Canadian business, and really bring some confidence for foreign investors in Canada and give Canadian businesses some real confidence going forward, because we know that trade is absolutely central to our economy, and trade is really a great way to create well-paying middle-class jobs, and those are the jobs that Canadian society is really built on.
Okay. Mrs. Freeland, Mrs. Minister, last October, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Armenia for the Francophonie Summit, and when he met his counterpart, the Prime Minister of Armenia, Mr. Pashinyan, both leaders discussed the broad range of issues, and they emphasized to broaden diplomatic and economic cooperation. For Canadian Armenian community, establishing a permanent Canadian diplomatic mission in Armenia is very important. Are there any plans to establish a Canadian embassy in Armenia in the near future?
So let me start just by talking about that visit, because the Prime Minister was so enthusiastic about it. He was looking forward to the visit before it happened, and he returned to Canada completely in love with Armenia.
That's right.
He came back, he addressed, I think, I'm not supposed to reveal what happens in cabinet, but I don't think the Prime Minister or my colleagues will mind if I reveal that he came back and he must have spoken for 15 minutes to the group of ministers about what a wonderful trip it had been, what a great meeting with the new Armenian government, and how enthusiastic he was about Armenia and excited about the relationship with Armenia. And if I could say for myself, I worked for many years as a journalist in Kyiv and in Moscow, and I had the chance to visit Yerevan as a reporter. And I understood immediately when the Prime Minister described his trip and how much he loved Armenia, because my experience in traveling to Armenia as a journalist was exactly the same.
I didn't know that you visited
Yes, I've been to Yerevan, yes, in the 90s. And really, Armenian Canadians will know what a wonderful, amazing country, amazing city Yerevan is, what a rich culture. I also thought the food was delicious. But I just have to tell you, our Prime Minister totally fell in love with Armenia. We as Canadians are very proud of our Armenian Canadian community. And I think that our objective needs to be, of our government, of the Armenian Canadian community, of Armenia, to build on this really good foundation and to grow a richer and deeper and stronger relationship. And as the relationship grows, we can hope that we get to a point where there's so much going on that we absolutely need to have a stronger diplomatic presence there. So I think that is a good objective for us all to have.
And to conclude our interview, I'm going to ask you about one of your books you wrote a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, 2012, which won the literary prize for you. Plutocrats. Plutocrats, and in which it is this book is about modern capitalism, where you explain how the rich get super rich and how the poor get poorer. What are the negative effects of inequality in the world today?
Oh, that is a very big question, and you've saved it to the end so that I have no choice but to have a very long conversation with you. A very sneaky journalist. Look, I think that we need to be clear that it's good for people to work hard, to be entrepreneurs, to build businesses, to build companies, to get rich. And wealthy business people are very often people who create lots of wonderful jobs, create lots of wonderful products for the people around them. And that's a wonderful thing. But what I wrote about in my book was the ways in which we were getting to a stage, and perhaps moving into a period in world economic history where the way our economy was working, and the book, as you know, is about the whole world, not just about Canada specifically, but that the way the economy, maybe specifically in Western industrialized countries, is working is that the lion's share, a disproportionate share of the rewards, go to those at the very top, and a much smaller share goes to everybody else. Why is that a problem? I think it's a problem for a few reasons. Maybe first and foremost, speaking now as a Canadian and as a Canadian politician, I really feel that Canada's core strength is we are a middle-class country. And it's really interesting, when you do surveys of Canadians, overwhelming majority of Canadians consider themselves to be middle class. And some people, economists sometimes say, oh, that's absurd, how can everybody be middle class? I think it says something really good about our national culture, that Canadians like to consider themselves part of the middle class. I think we like to consider ourselves to be a society of people who are broadly equal to each other, of people who are really compatriots, a society where everyone will have a pretty good life, and where everyone will have certainly equal opportunities, and where there's a really strong social safety net that ensures no one gets left behind. I think that that is a vision of a good society that most Canadians would subscribe to. If you have an economy where a disproportionate share of the rewards are going to the top 1%, or in my book I wrote about the top share of the rewards going to the top 0.1%, a really skinny group of people at the top, then you're not going to have a middle-class society like that, and you won't have the opportunities, the jobs that the middle class needs to thrive. To me, that's not the kind of place I want to live. That's not the kind of place where I want to raise my kids. And I think it poses tremendous political dangers. I think the rise of populism that we are seeing, and of a really angry nativist populism in many Western democracies is connected very much to this hollowing out of the middle class. When people do not see opportunities for themselves, when they think that their children, instead of having a better life than they do, will have a worse life. When they worry that having worked hard all their lives, they're not going to have a secure retirement, that makes people really angry. And when people are angry, they can turn to really dangerous, simplistic political solutions. So that, for me, is the single biggest, set of reasons why I think we need to be very, very worried about an economic system, an economic structure that does not give a big enough share of the pie to that broad group of people in the middle.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Minister.
Thank you for the question about my book. You got me very excited there.
Thank you.